Hi there. Thank you for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Artcast, a show where a couple of visual storytellers get together and ruminate on some different kinds of topics, thoughts, wonderings that occur to one when one takes on the endeavor of visual storytelling. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist. The other host is...
Hey, I'm Rob Stenzinger, a user experience and game
Oh,
designer.
so you will too. My name... Sorry about that, Rob. I forgot to hit mute on my video preview, so now they got fed in to the mix.
That was freaky.
I was so excited that I did like a clean intro where I was like, I'm not goofing up. I'm not tripping on any words. I came in here smooth as silk. Time to go sleek. And then I do that. I hit a tab, and now you hear me talking over myself. That's okay.
Well, that's like a special effect. That's a trick. Somehow, I think that adding more Jerzy adds more, more everything. So
it's more flavor.
More flavor. Yes.
I don't know. So we are visual storytellers. We make things to communicate with images, a lot of images, comic books, game design, user experience. And this week, for our 249th episode, we're going to focus on the UX stuff, the user experience stuff, which you brought to the table this time, Rob, as our UX guy on the team. And it turns out this is something we've talked about quite a bit in the past, huh?
It's definitely come up a lot of times as a theme, and in different angles, bits and pieces. There's this let's see, parts of the topic dating all the way back to episode 36, when we talked about preparedness, and I think we visited some ideas related to empathy mapping.
Oh wow, we did it back then. Holy moly, that was in May of 2012.
Well, we've been together for 7 years, so it's hard to remember all those things.
So episode 36. You know what? In 6 years, I bet your thoughts have changed or evolved or been refined over that time. I doubt that what you're going to say or talk about today is going to match perfectly to what we talked about in episode 36, but that'll be a good...
Yeah. You'll be able to play it over itself, and there'll be a slight delay, but
really?
it'll be just like watching the moon's surface. Not much changes. No, I mean... What's funny is I look back at that and I was like, wow, we talked about empathy mapping way back then. And I totally forgot about the example link that we used as part of, a resource to share. So, yeah, and that's just a sampling. So we talked about, UX related to character writing on episode 86. We talked about collaborating with, and mentioning some collaborative design things on episode 116. Episode 198, it worked into when we talked about the hero's journey. And 222, there's a thing that's part of this thesis that's like this kind of grab bag of UX things, right? That tomorrow's skill or feature. We'll talk about that. That was episode 222. And then in 241, pretty recent, we talked about launching a product. And
wow.
Ways to test ideas and whatnot, which is a huge thing, the feedback loop and user experience, and using some kind of, the people you're serving as part of the design criteria to make the thing you make better, or at least how you present the thing, right? And improve it so it reaches them and serves like you hope it would.
So this is like a playlist we can put together in the show notes for this topic. Yeah. Something else we talked about, I am totally not trying to put any kind of pressure on either of us to like, hey, let's make another thing. But I'll say this to see if there's any interest out there. Like, would it be useful to the leaners if we took collections of episodes like this and just like packaged them up on something like Gumroad, where you could just download them for free, but it's like one link to just get them? Or are you fine with us just putting together like a list of links?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can. That's a product we could test. right?
Yeah.
Because there's getting some signal. This is we're modeling right here, right? So you can ask yourself, would this be a good thing? You can get feedback which is a kind of, in a way, you're doing a little survey to get, see what kind of response happens. But that a survey response is one thing. Actual behavior, observable evidence in the world, that's a different thing entirely. So in fact, people
I'm just going to focus group it, Rob. Sorry.
I'm
going to ask people, turn the knob this way if you like it, turn the knob that way if you don't like it.
I am fresh out of tables to flip, but I'm flipping them.
Okay. So I'm sensing a good transition to go into me throwing an argument at you and you coming back at me where I say, Rob, I'm a cartoonist. I'm not a UI UX designer. I can't do this. Only special people with educations can do this. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to hit the music like this to get Rob pumped up. Say, come back and get me.
I'm coming for you now. Okay. Real talk. It sounds like you're going through a phase. You're going through a situation. You're eager. You've got stuff to share. You've got your creative effort. You're putting it into the world. That's wonderful, and it's natural. It happens. It happens to lots of people, right? And as you're going through this, you're going to notice how maybe others are noticing your work. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're noticing your work and then not doing much after that. Or maybe they notice your work, start doing stuff after that, and maybe even telling you the kinds of things they would like you to make next. But what are you doing about that? There's a potential feedback loop you could be tuning into. And that's kind of what the whole user experience thing is. It's this not just set and forget, not just put something into the world that's awesome, getting through the whole creative cycle and finishing it. The challenge is, well, how will the world really get to benefit most from what you make if there's some disconnect at the end of the cycle where you're like, it's there, but now what? What can you do? Yeah, there's stuff like marketing and all that, right? And other things we could think about that too. But there is just the elements of, well, who are you trying to serve? Maybe this is the right product, maybe it's not, maybe it could be packaged differently. And then, using some things from the tool set, the toolbox that is in the realm of user experience that you could benefit from. And the thing is, you have a foothold on some of these skills just as you are, just by going through. You made something. Okay. And I know we're going to dive into the examples of that later on, but how's this going as far as answering your question?
It's strangely timely in that I'm gonna pull up my personal website, jdrose.com. I have a link in my sidebar. It says, "Who wants me to lead a workshop at your school?" And it's got a kid in the audience raising their hand. Right? Isn't that cute?
It is.
And you click that link, and it takes you to a list of justification for teaching comics classes, and then some out of the box workshops. Here's a catchy title with a description, and it says what my rates are and everything. Even says even has links to some of my Lean Into Art workshops. Even has a link to a video of me doing a talk on why comics are important. But you know what wasn't on there? A contact button.
Ooh.
And so I got a direct message on Twitter from a school district where hey, we would really love to have you come to our schools and teach to a whole lot of kids and pay you a lot of money to do it, but we don't know how to reach you. And then they actually said very politely, an email address on your website would probably be a good idea.
Yeah. Wow. That's an awesome example of getting a signal from your audience. Very, very direct. And look at they went through that extra effort, which is interesting. Who's there that's not going through that effort?
Yeah,
for this
yeah, that
one.
was my next thought. I was like, "Whoo, guess what I'm doing this weekend? I'm updating my website a little bit." And then when you suggested this topic, I was like, "Oh, thank God, I get to dive into this and come into this weekend really fresh with a lot of great ideas for how to think about my personal site." So that's how this is sounding to me, Rob. When you ask that question, that's
Okay.
what I'm hearing.
And that's exactly what this episode is for. It's to take a tour of these things. It's to sort of point out that, okay, maybe you aren't about to go, as a way to support your efforts. If you've focused on, well, writing comics and, maybe even gathering some extra skills about putting comics on the web and whatever, you may not be ready to essentially lead a user experience research team, or even be a researcher on a team, or to do other things related to, providing UX skills professionally, like, I don't know, collaborative design, and doing, wireframes to get a project from concept into, step by step, uh, validating the thoughts, testing the ideas along the way. But like, in let's see, with all the tricks and trimmings of UX, right? You don't have to make interactive prototypes. You don't have to do all that. But there's a lot that you could do, right? There are things that are the equivalent of, just trying a new app with a goal in mind, and it can give you some new perspective on your problem. And especially if you not just try a new app, but you try something like make something and then put it in front of someone to get feedback, and keep that into your process. And now you're benefiting from user-centric design, especially, um, we'll share some again more examples about that along the way. But just feel bolstered, or, comfortable with, dabbling in this just a little bit, can give you significant benefit. You know, that you don't have to essentially have the, official label or title of this thing to start picking up some of the tools and skills from it, in the early approachable ones at the very least. And that's where, just to hang a little lampshade on that, is we talked all about that concept in our episode. Let's see, tomorrow's skill or feature 222. And I think the quote from that was a catalyst for that whole episode was when I journaled, today's role is tomorrow's skill and next week's feature. Whole idea is that there's a whole ecosystem of people providing these capabilities. Books get better and better, apps and ways to automate stuff get better and better, tools, all that, and yeah, taking advantage of that can be handy to get started and get you by. At least solve those problems a little bit better than you were. So, and stop me, or
Well,
keep
it's just
going.
I'm feeling the desire bubbling up to play devil's advocate again and say, yes,
Yeah.
I'm used to leveling up all the time as a cartoonist. As a cartoonist, as a freelance cartoonist, I am leveling up like crazy when it comes to communicating visually. When you talk about trying out new apps and you try to think about like with a purpose and everything, God, I don't got to do that, do I? I mean, I'm a freelance cartoonist. I don't have to think about UI UX design. I'll just get a Wix site.
Sure, that's
Um,
true. So you can, but you kind of did by that little thought process. You said, you know what? I want to find an approachable way to solve this problem with the skills and the time and the resources I have. Right? That's great. You don't have to go buy the cool stuff that someone doing UX design day in day out might do. But you may have some of these tools already. I mean, you're a visual communicator. You can be using these same tools that you design your pages and layouts in, to design the overall layout or intent or even the flow of like, well, the web page where you're presenting your products or your portfolio, your services.
well, and I think something you've said in past episodes on this topic before, and what's in the notes here is something I'm reminded of is, as a freelance cartoonist, my job is to create work that the client wants. Right now, when it comes to like working with a publisher, it's a different thing. But like when I'm doing like storyboards for like a TV commercial or something, or if I'm doing like illustration for some kind of advertisement for a university or something like that. I have to have a conversation with them as to who I'm serving with this artwork and tailor it for that, right? And in the best case scenarios, which we did an episode with Jesse Kaufman a while back about the relationship we have working on the Captain Seriously project, and all the conversations I have with all the different people involved, all the different teachers, school administrators, and then the people in the Seriously organization itself, to create a product that serves all of their needs. So, shame on me for not thinking more like that about the presentation of my presence online, right? Who do I want to visit this thing? How do I make this easy for them to look at? And how do I talk to them more to get input on that?
Okay, super funny. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. This you might end up tapping into a well of, oh gosh, I totally forgot I should have done this thing. Like, well, for instance, putting in a link to your email on your portfolio. Maybe.
Yeah, I wonder how much business I missed. Oh, that's not good.
That feeling can be a pretty big mixed bag, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
But this stuff happens, and and part of why it happens is not having some kind of like recurrence to it, right? So you revisiting it from time to time, especially when you pick up stuff you notice about it over time, you will find those errors. Like having one error isn't that big of a deal, but I mean, but in never having the chance or having that be sort of an accidental event, why that error is discovered, that's the harder part. And making time for that. How many of these things can you afford to put in your like your flow? How do you run your business or your side project or whatever it is? This might be one of those things you want to be tuning into with some recurrence. What kind of traffic am I getting on that page? What kind of results am I noticing? Like people reaching out to me. Oh, why am I not getting anyone reaching out to me? That kind of thing. And it can be easy. Like you notice a mistake, and it's almost like I'm guessing the intensity of one of those mistakes can build up if it's been out there a long time. Like I know I've noticed like spelling errors and stuff on my portfolio before that have been there like for a year, right? Not the best feeling, but it happens. And I don't know. I think it's a good reminder to be like, there's got to be some kind of recurrence to this. So maybe setting a calendar appointment quarterly, even annually, something better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and so like as a visual storyteller, you've got the ability to think through how you communicate the layout of a thing as a like, well, let's see, written storyteller, what have you, just telling stories. You're used to inhabiting the points of view of different characters, and now you can think about, well, the different kinds of people who would be coming to your to use your services are just other worldviews to inhabit. So from someone else's perspective and goals, what does this look like?
Can they accomplish example of that? Yeah. I'm pulling it up. I have a great example of that. That man, Anne really just like splashed some cold water in my face about this recently. Keep going. I'm sorry. I'm going to look this up while you.
Oh, cool. I love that you're digging up examples, and this is all part of that whole ball of encouragement that says there's a foothold in this, and especially so you are someone who okay, you're making your own stories, but then you're also consulting and doing this work for others as well. Yeah, clearly you have some practices that will be a good foothold to digging into, taking a fresh look at how could you evaluate setting up your how you're presenting your work.
Okay, and so is it
your example?
Oh, sorry, Rob.
Yeah, you have an example, Jerzy?
Oh, yeah, I do. So this is going to be tough for the people who are listening on audio, but I've talked about this example so many times that maybe longtime listeners will be able to conjure this in their mind. But this is that example I've used a lot to demonstrate how comics can do things that other media can't. you remember this amethyst page? Where here, let me see if I can mark it up. Like the interesting thing about it that I use in the classroom is the reading direction is panel 1. Oh, let me get a different ink color. Sorry about that. Come on, ink. I want a nice bright color. There we go. So it goes panel 1 to panel 2 to panel 3 to panel 2, panel 4, panel 5, and to panel 3, right? So I was using this once in a classroom with teachers who didn't really read comics very much. The whole point of the class was to teach them how to use comics in the classroom. And I was trying to inspire them to show them, like, look how powerful this medium is that you're playing with. And this one teacher looked up at me and she looked very pained and she said, "Why are you doing this to me?" And Anne said, in retrospect, perhaps that wasn't the best example because you kind of threw them in the deep end and just asked them to swim, and you might have scared some of them off rather than inspire them, And she's totally right. I didn't stop to think, what is their worldview? What is their experience? What kind of stuff are they doing on a regular basis? Would this particular example be appropriate to somebody who's teaching 3rd grade, right? Yes, it's an exciting thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean, just because I see why it's exciting doesn't mean anybody else or the people in that particular moment needs to see. So I think about like designing a portfolio site. Yeah, I've got like crazy skills when it comes to thinking about how to organize information visually. But I also have a depth of knowledge that can also lead me to go down primrose paths to things that may be clever or cute or elegant, but not necessarily communicative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think, I mean, you may be trying to, like, there's someone in mind that you're trying to please. There's some kind of criteria, like you're making a layout, or you're just, even the names you give the stuff on your site, like if there's a menu, and what words you use to choose in the menu, and what labels you're giving the sections of your page. All this stuff can be, making it easier to sort of find one's way through it, or maybe saying something else. Maybe in the absence of thinking of this other audience, you can really get pulled into your normal things that you find are excellent and attractive and exciting and skillful. So is that who you're trying to speak to? And if it isn't, well, what's the benefit? What's the value of this thing you're trying to convey to them? And so maybe use that as a way to both in like the content, whatever, what you're showing, and also how do you arrange and display the content.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So yeah, and choosing those examples. So you can think of it as you can always find a way to, it's the feedback loop again. So if with your audience, you're sharing a thing, and is it resonating? Maybe when you're setting yourself up to present a share, use like some progressive disclosure. And that's like a principle we'll talk about in a little bit. Something that that starts out with this approachable, initial step, but then there's something behind that step, and then maybe something behind the step behind that, right? And, but there's a way to lead someone through, and as they're digging in. And so I guess part of what I want to convey with the intro, this context and invitation to say, yeah, pick up some of these tools. Not all of them will cut you. It's not magic. User experience, and that the tools and disciplines related are, we're trying to understand people and how we think, and how we think about how others think, and then test those ideas, like whatever you end up coming up with, and then do something based on what you learn from having tested that idea. Not magic. And let's see. Part of it too, even if you're making not the best perfect decision with your user experience, maybe you catch only one problem, and there could be more. That's all right. I mean, you still at least are on a path of some kind of improvement, and tuning in to who's trying to connect with you and your services. But then we've got some thoughts, like actual tools, a toolbox of stuff to dig into.
So we're going to open up the tool bag in the second half.
Yeah. That's what we'll do.
No magic tricks, but useful tools that we're going to breeze through. And Rob is going to try to invite us into the world of thinking about UX a little bit more carefully in presenting our work. I'm excited about it. We'll do that in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. And but before we do that, we have to thank some people who make the show possible. And those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/leanintoart is the website. What is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. You can say, like, I believe in Rob and Jerzy. I believe in the work that they make. Here's $1 a month or whatever you can afford that helps make the show more sustainable. We want to thank 5 people who have been doing exactly that. First up, Brandon Dayton. Find Brandon on Twitter at Brandon Dayton. Brandon's doing an art giveaway for a Green Monk. You should check it out. Follow him on Twitter at Brandon Dayton. And then Jesse Kaufman, who we just mentioned a little while ago, who's a friend of the show, been on the show a couple times. You can find Jesse on Twitter at Jesse Kaufman, Kauffman. And then D. Jusan. Thank you, D, for believing in us and what we do. You can find D on Twitter at DeeJuusan. And Esprit Deborah. You can find Esprit on Twitter at WeAreLATech. Thank you, Esprit. And finally, Ben Odgren. And you can find Ben on Twitter at Ben Odgren. And you can join them at patreon.com/leanintoart, where you will find all the shows we make, as well as the extra leans, the shows we record just for people who support us on Patreon, where it's me and Rob riffing live on topics. And usually we start with no agenda, right? And we always land with some kind of takeaway, don't we?
Every time. Every single time.
124 episodes of Extra Lean. And you can get them right now by joining us at patreon.com/leanintoart. We thank everybody who has been supporting us there. It means a lot.
It does. Thank you so much.
All right. We need some music to take us into the toolbox stuff. Do I have any like toolbox music I could play? Do I? What's this one? It's a little bit leaded, a little heavy, a little synthy, but at least bridges us over.
It does. It's saying that maybe not all of the tools are safe here. So that's
how that
fair
one
enough.
sounded?
A little bit. A little ominous. But it's good to be safety conscious when we're thinking about
that's right,
helping our audience. Okay, so the intent of this, like, I'm curious about your reactions. We'll share tools and try to do a tour, right? In a way, this is like, okay, here you're in a workshop. There's this kind of table and that kind of table and this kind of, clippy thing and this kind of stacky thing, whatever. But then now like this stuff is there. And we have delved deeper into it in the past, and we'll dig deeper again in the future. Maybe a couple of these we'll dig into, but there's probably too many to go too far. But it's a tour. I think a good place to start out with is a journey. So if you're looking at your project, you think about, like, what are your goals for this thing, and what does that look like over time? A journey. It's like there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. Maybe there's a little bit of what happened before the beginning, what happened after the end. But either way, you've got this timeline of, okay, someone, for example, comes to your they comes to your portfolio. No, wait a minute. That's probably not the beginning. The beginning is they become aware of you, and then they find a way to go to your portfolio. Then they go to your portfolio, and then they do some exploration there, right? So wait a minute. What's their goal as they're going through this journey, right? And are you providing ways for them to get then further in toward accomplishing that goal, right? And then what? What does it look like at the end? What's the final outcome for them and for you? So you have these flows over time. And there may be a few of these things overlapping that perhaps there are. I'm going to jump around in my list here just for your record, Jerzy, because a perfect thing to pair with a journey is a persona. A persona is like, it's a fancy word. It's just it's a theoretical person, and it's someone who has goals, maybe things that their motivations, pains, and habits, maybe something like that encompasses their attitude, right? Like, what are they coming to you with? Like, I need help quick. I got to make a comic fast. Or I really want to make a comic that changes the world, or whatever they would go along with their ideally. This is the most important, most functionally useful aspect of a persona. Whatever the other stuff you end up putting in is just behaviors. What do they do? What does this persona do versus that persona? And there you go. This now you
very early on in our conversations about this, I have a very clear memory of me coming at it with the assumption of, well, you just say guys age 18 to 24, women ages 42 to 70, right? And I threw that out as like, okay, yeah, that's how you start a persona. You're like, no.
So those are demographics, and
those are demographics. Yeah.
Some folks in other disciplines use demographic based personas. Okay. But user experience doesn't typically use that.
So why is behavior more important than demographic to you?
Because you can match it up with testing your ideas. So are you able to see this stuff happen? So you believe that there's this persona, this kind of person, a theoretical person that is somewhat represented in the real world. And if, as your project, continues and it exists, can you observe that this stuff actually happened, right? So you think, people are going to find out about my portfolio from my business card, and that's the beginning of the journey, right? And then if no one's then visiting your portfolio, maybe that persona who you thought totally uses business cards to follow up on things, maybe that's not as much of a behavior that exists in the real world. So total made up example, but because again, it really ties into the whole practical use of these design tools. That's all. So we probably could and should dig further into those.
No, I like this idea of defining what the journey for you and the person interacting with your stuff is. That's something that I think I've had a very simplistic approach to in the past, where it's like, I just want people to buy my comics. If I put a link up there and say, like, here's where you can buy my comics, when people search for me and want to know what comics I make, they can click that button and get my comics. But how do they find that link? How, like, what am I thinking about? Like, what are they getting the comics for? What do I want to have happen after that?
Well, and like what, and then there is a timeline. There is more that happens, because even after they have found, like, they found your portfolio, they discovered enough, they contacted you, they hired you, and then you, like, the journey goes on beyond that, right? So there's a bit of a flow of those kind of things, and what do you think would serve you and your audience well? And then, have you designed something to help bring about that outcome? Right? So maybe it's, just something to serve all the way along the journey. Like, do you have all these things met in a way? Because you can take it from a timeline horizontally, like stuff from the past and all the way on to through the future. You can then twist that over, and now you have a checklist. Like, do I have this stuff? Is it ready? Is it in my project?
Yeah.
Can I serve all these steps?
Okay.
And then, so perhaps you might have more than one hypothetical user persona that you're serving too. So now you may have more than one journey, and that can be.
Oh yeah, yeah. The thing I'm trying to untangle as you talk is like, okay, well, I want to have people buy my comics, but I also want people to hire me to draw comics. So is that those are two different paths to take, right?
Yeah, two potentially very different audiences with different motivations, which means probably different landing pages. With perhaps like a subtle way to cross over of, like, oh, wait a minute, I meant to, I'm looking for someone to make comics for me, not buy their existing comics, right? But if there's a way, like, to get them over to the other side, but chances are that having a landing page for each given purpose probably going to help with more clarity, less competition among goals, and let more focused message to different audiences.
Right.
Possible to handle within the same website, but then might need their own discrete areas within.
Okay.
Yeah. So journeys, personas. I don't want to go too fast and not have enough room for reaction.
Oh no, that was all the reaction I had for that one. And then the rest of the reaction is like, oh, I gotta think more on this because yeah, because it's such a timely topic. I'm instantly thinking about, oh, I was gonna update my website this weekend, and that you just layered on a whole nother piece that I hadn't considered yet. So,
Just to keep layering on you. So one exercise that can help you with creating a persona, if that seems like it might be useful for you, is empathy mapping. And
okay.
let's say you have a set of observable behaviors, and you kind of have a theme around this, where you're like, this is let's see, how would you say, comics hiring manager, comic art director, comic client, Carla, right? And then Carla has a project with a budget and is looking for this match of someone who can do things with good turnaround, reasonable turnaround, and in kid friendly audience, right? This is the right comics hiring Carla, whereas Extreme Comics Eric, right? Maybe Extreme Comics Eric is looking for explosions and rated R everything, right?
He wants to do a comics adaptation of Chopping Mall. All heads
Okay.
exploding all the time.
I would imagine there's not like your way to serve comics extreme Eric. I forget what we had here.
Extreme American comics hiring Carla. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That maybe there's a way to refer to somewhere else, or to say, this is my main thing, and not even talk about the thing you don't do, like just emphasize whatever. So that would serve, even the Eric persona. But how could you get there with that, with now you've got like some characteristics that's helpful. You can think of their goals for, along a journey. That makes sense. But then what about this let's see, going the more like another layer as far as emotional resonance with these personas, without going into demographics. You can use a tool called empathy mapping, which we've talked about a few times. I've talked about this a bit in a talk that we've also talked about on the show, called Collaborate Like Columbo. And then anyway, what an empathy map is, you can think of it as like a simple quadrant, but there's sort of two categories of observations, right? The ones you can see, and then there's ones you're inferring, right? So the ones you can see or observe are like, what does this person say? What does this person do? So ideally, you're looking out in the world, maybe people what have you, and you're thinking of them as examples to empathize with things that they say and do, that they're kind of along this persona. Or maybe you haven't formed that persona yet, and you're like, I need to look around and help and get a foothold before I even come up with the comics hiring Carla. So you look at what these different people are saying and doing, and then you think about the things you can infer or guess about, which is, what do you think they're thinking, and what do you think they're feeling as they're doing and saying, right? And there you go. Now you have like some things you're guessing at, but things that you also can observe, and it sort of can help you think about them as someone you're trying to help, and how do they fit in. Give them a journey, see how it goes.
Carrie is backing you up in the chat. She says that as a creator with multiple landing sites on my page, it has also helped me to trim down the message I want to put out there. Like, yeah, that focusing of the message. I immediately think of, so I follow a lot of teachers and educators on Twitter, and right there is a constant stream of information of what they are saying and doing. They're sharing what they're doing in their classroom. Here's pictures of my classroom. These are activities that we're leading, and then they're also sharing what they're thinking or they're sharing what they're saying in terms of, this is a point of frustration for me. Why can't we do more of this and less of that? Like a topic that is getting thrown around a lot, at least in the last couple, well, like I want to say the last couple of years on my teaching Twitter, is let kids read what they want. Let's stop being prescriptive about what is appropriate reading level and for what books are for what reading levels. Let's let the kids read what they want and let them fall in love with reading first, and then we can start to push them a little bit harder into the directions that they need to go. Okay, so there is this data stream I can mine to say, okay, I'm listening to what you're saying, I'm watching what you're doing, and I can start to put together this map to figure out how I can better position myself as a teaching artist to say, this is why you should have me come to your school. This is what I can solve those problems for you. Here are the ways that I can particularly solve those problems for you. Not that I'm the only one to solve them, but here's my special way of solving that problem for you, or assisting you in solving that problem, right? Clarifying that message.
And you're forming your ideas around the problem by listening and observing, seeing. That's a form of, well, some folks call that social listening, and you can get product ideas from this, right? You can get ways to get some insight on how you can improve what you make, or think of a new thing to make, or a new service around that. That's a real thing. That's actually kind of a big. There are a lot of big tools and data and industry, but you don't have to have all those big fancy tools. You can just go out there and search for folks who seem to align with those interests. People who say, I'm a teacher and I'm on Twitter and I'm sharing things. And they probably, especially if they're representing of like, I'm a passionate practitioner of this discipline. And so of course they're going to express a lot of caring thought and stuff related to it. Perfect thing to tune into, and an awesome segue, right, to highlight another UX tool, which is research. It's you don't have to be a professional researcher to benefit from doing a little bit of research. It can really inform you with getting first perspective on what you made by putting it in the world and see what happens, treating your project itself like research, which we did talk about on the what was it? Product launching. And we talked about that a few times. Searching for minimum viable and minimum lovable product wheel, or MVP and MLP on leanentoart.com. You'll see a few episodes there. And that's all driven by making stuff that has an informed feedback loop. That totally is related to this entire episode. But yeah, as Jerzy mentioned, the social listening, you could tune into things like app reviews or book reviews related to things that, people are that are in an area of interest and audience that's similar to what you make. You can maybe, is there any sort of market, they say this competitive landscape data, right? Even though, storytellers, artists, we're not hardcore competing in like a traditional capitalist kind of way, because there's so much that, great work really does help float all boats and all that, by just getting a critical mass of a lot of interested people hungry for more, right? But like sales data can help too. Maybe that's not the most important signal to turn into, but it can be there. It can help you with choosing from, maybe you've got a couple of project ideas and you're like, you know what, this one looks a little more viable for this time. I'm going to hold on to this other idea. It's a handy tool. But then to emphasize the kinds of research that get you in contact really is as much as you can, as direct as you can with the people you're actually trying to make stuff for. So that could be anything from, I'm going to test 2 different banners on my website and see which one gets clicks. Or, of course, ad campaigns, that kind of thing. Testing different ways of phrasing stuff as far as reaching out to people. Doing surveys where, Jerzy was joking about doing sort of group-based getting feedback by presenting stuff to a group and getting reactions in that way. And it's problematic. And we've talked about this before, because we're social creatures and we really affect one another in groups. So you'll get a lot of, as soon as someone's willing to share an opinion in some way, that creates kind of this shift in a group's, like, oh, it's safe to say this kind of thing. Whoosh, I'm going to go there. Or it depends on the personalities. Well, now maybe there's an oppositional thing. Anyway, it's distracting, and it gets you further away from observational evidence, because it's people talking about what they would hypothetically do, right? Not that the only decent way overall to get some data that's at least directionally interesting is just keep it to a survey, see what people say there, and then so it's individual. It's not sort of a group influencing dynamic. And so then there's cheap ways to put surveys in the world, including just your social feed, whatnot.
I just realized I have never sent a survey to any place that I've ever taught at. I really should be doing that.
Dude, yes.
Holy cow.
It kills me anytime I put on a workshop and it's not like built into the infrastructure, where if I can't do a survey, that kind of data is so awesome, so valuable, because getting a bit of a feel for what people are reacting to when this is fresh and top of mind. And it's especially if there's sort of maybe a mix of multiple choice, but then also free text as well, with some questions that just get people to put stuff in their own words and see what you find in people's own words.
I don't want to put you on the spot, so feel free to say, like, this is another episode if it is. But like, just could you ballpark some of the kinds of questions you would ask in a survey? Because I've worked at with different venues where they have their own surveys they give the students, and sometimes it's like, how'd you hear about this? Where'd you park? And I'm like, well, is that really useful? It is like, would you recommend this to a friend? Any other input you want to give about this? And like, one of the places like where it said like any other input you want to give us, and they would just be like, this was great. Like, okay, well, that wasn't super helpful. I'm glad they liked it, but what kind of questions would you ask?
Let's see. This is probably a big topic, because we could talk about doing scrappy surveys, right? I'm not trying to table it. But like, there's way more to dig into with this. So, what you want to ask is, let's see. Tell me about when this is working for you. Tell me about when this is not working for you. That kind of thing. And let's see. What would be let's see, what would be the top 3 needs for this kind of service, and what's stopping, what has stopped you in the past, or what's caused you to call in a comic instructor before? I don't know, say something like that, where it's something where you can learn something about that you can act on, right? And something that will be able to be expressed without you doing some leading questioning, right? So leading someone in a question is somehow implying the kind of answer you want, or
right. Would you like more inking demos? Like that?
Yeah, where it might be a little too a little too boxing in your audience, and leading them is something that can happen a lot when you're doing so let's say, I'll try to answer your survey thing with pointing out another research kind of technique, where you can taking what you make and then putting it in front of someone and asking them to perform a task, right? So, hey, could you check out my site? I just want to see if you can send me an email through my site. give that a try. And then whatever, so while you're watching this person, of course, if there's a whole, I guess there's a usability 101. So you want to make someone comfortable, say, I'm not testing you, I'm testing this thing. I want to see how well it communicates and can do its job. This is the thing I'm testing, not testing you. So I just want to see, like, this is what I want to see if it can do. Try to send an email through my website. And then don't say anything, let them go through a struggle. And then if they are struggling and you can ask them to sort of think out loud. What are you noticing? They're like, I don't know. What should I click? What am I supposed to click on this? And then you do your best to be as slippery as possible. You go, do you think you should click on that? Right. And so you try not to lead that person and that kind of voice, that kind of mentality, because you want to see what they do and how they see what you're sharing. If you're injecting your own, imposing your own ideas on it, you're not getting good data. So why even do the test in the first place? Another way where we do that is we send signals of, like, please approve of this. I'm emotionally attached and I urgently need, instead of the feedback and observational evidence, I need reassurance. And I'm going to say that's not a good situation. Like, feel comfortable before you go into research. So somehow get that reassurance from a different group, not from who you're trying to test on.
Right.
So,
that's a really good distinction to make. I've caught myself slipping into that, like falling into the wanting reassurance rather than wanting good data, and totally corrupting the experience, right? Because I'll start, like, I'll hear them being like, I'll do this with, like, story testing when I'm, like, showing, like, my thumbnails to somebody, and they'll, like, I'm a little confused about such and such, and I'll jump in and say, oh, that gets covered later on in the book, don't worry. Like, shut up, Jerzy, back off, let them have those questions, because those are good questions to have, because maybe you could make something a little bit clearer as to insinuate that that'll be covered later on in the story, so that, or maybe that's a point of intrigue that you want them to be intrigued there, but back off and don't interrupt, right?
Dude, I did it during this conversation. So when you asked me to model about, and like go through, like, how would you ask this? I completely forgot the first step, which is a useful, like the most critical thing about doing research, is ask yourself, what do you want to learn from what you made? Right? Like, that's the core, that's the building block that you can use to construct, something to learn the thing you're trying to learn. So what instrument will help you discover an answer to your question? That's the key step. And then, so you have a question, what you want to learn, you pick a way to learn it. Because somewhere, so you pick a way to learn it, you go through that learning experience, you gather your observations, and then now you need to make sense of it. You have data, go through it and update your hypothesis, update what you believe. Maybe there's more things to learn. You have new questions. What would help you then next? So research is a powerful tool. It doesn't have to ever go away. And you could always be doing just a little bit of it with your project, for whatever kind, like if you have a little bit of, just even, a little bit of time on some occasional basis, you can always dig a little bit more into either the usage data for what's happening, the outcomes for what's happening, or form a new way to test this thing. Put what you made in front of an audience and see how it's meeting or not meeting their expectations.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good framing too. Is like, by starting with, what do you want to learn? It reminds me of Ann and I've been doing these school visits and workshops for the Rockets book tour, and part of our presentation that we do is talking about how we, after the excitement of getting the gig of doing the book on rocket history wore off, we realized, oh crap, we're not experts on rocketry. And so how do we find out what we even need to know to do this book right? And so what we did is we sat down and wrote down an outline of what we did know. Okay, here's what we do know, and now let's see where the gaps are. And then it turned into like, okay, well, we don't know anything about rockets used in entertainment. Let's start looking there, right? Writing down everything that we did know was like a good starting point to figure out what we needed to know.
That's great. And so that's interesting. So yeah, that is like figuring out a new product. That's awesome. So what would you call it? I mean, you're doing an inventory. I think that's another powerful thing. Is essentially we've called it unboxing, unpacking, but you're creating a list and then seeing where are there gaps in this list, and you could even say where are there questions about items on this list to give you a hint of where to go next.
Yeah, one of the very first things we wrote down was like, how do rockets even go? We didn't even know how they really worked. It's like, I haven't taken a physics class since like high school, you know? I don't remember how this all happened. I don't remember Newton's laws, right? So like that was like a big one. We put a big circle around. Okay, well, we better learn that. But yeah, like framing up new projects is like, what do I want to learn from this thing? I think is a great framing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would totally add that to our list of tools. And
Troy in the chat is saying they say write what you know, but forget to tell you to research what you don't. Then you know more and can write more. Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
I think that's parenthetically should be underneath every time somebody says write what you know, and write what you know and be prepared to research what you don't know.
That's why isn't that the saying actually? Because that one sounds a lot more useful. So,
well, Troy, trademark it. Put it on Twitter tonight.
Right on. It's a good one.
All right.
So I think we've covered a bunch of tools. I don't know if
final thought time.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good to me. Okay, so in about a minute and 30 seconds, we will talk about some final thoughts, maybe some reading that you can do to continue on with your own research on this topic. But before we do that, we got to thank a couple more people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be us, me and Rob. We make this show. And I mean, we really make it possible because we're the ones who host the show. And we introduced ourselves as creators of stuff. And so we're going to take this moment to point at some of the stuff that we make and hope that you will interact with it. The thing that I would like you to check out is Amazon Academy, a new webcomic that I'm making with Dan Mishkin. Dan Mishkin of DC Comics fame, co-creator of Blue Devil and Amethyst, Princess of Gemworld, writer of Wonder Woman, Superman, countless other DC books. He wrote Dungeons & Dragons comics, Creeps with Tom Mandrake, and now we're making a comic together about a private school for girls taught by Amazons, where girls, like American girls, can take classes alongside Amazons and learn the ways of the Amazons. And on the latest update just dropped, where we meet a whole bunch of the different characters who are going to be following through this story. I don't know if there's any other thing else. It's Amazon, so there's going to be Greek mythology stuff in it, right? So like it's a school with magical Greek mythology stuff, like Hogwarts, but with Pegasus and Medusa and so on, right? The legends of Greek mythology in this school. I'm not spoiling anything because I don't think Medusa is actually in this story, but stuff like that. The website is amazonacademy.net, and it updates on Wednesdays. It's also on Instagram, Amazon Academy Comic, and there is a Facebook page as well. You can follow it. We're posting the pages natively on all those sites. So, Rob, you make a game.
Ah, yes. So, yeah, I have a game called This Panda Needs You. And it's like a super mellow game, great for all ages. It was initially designed by my wife Kate to honestly be a nice thing for the little ones who happen to have access to like an iPhone or iPad or Android phone or tablet, and do something interesting and useful like pattern matching and working with shapes and doing a little bit of basic interaction practice kind of things, with a really mellow calm game where there's a little panda cruising through a little bamboo forest. Everything's neat, this panda comes along, nice stacks of blocks. The blocks actually are really simple in the beginning, and the stacks get more and more complex, more shapes, more colors, and that's all fine. It's all put together. But then every single time panda shows up, sees the blocks, a cloud comes along, knocks them all down. Blocks go all over the place. This is where you come in to help. This panda needs you to put things right and solve the puzzles. So there's like over 50 levels where things get more progressively challenging. The panda celebrates and gives you feedback as you're making your progress, encouraging you to, finish it. You can do it. It's got another little calm feature in it too, where actually after you complete 10 levels, the little panda goes back home and takes a break. It's all good. It's all good. If you're like, hey, wait, panda, come back out and play. It's all good. You can hit the start button and continue. Panda continues on with from where you left off. You don't have to start back at the beginning. You just keep on going through those levels.
You can learn more about to build into the game to encourage them to take a break.
Yeah, we got feedback on that, and hey, feedback UX, and it's that was a good idea. It gives a nice little pace. It's satisfying to let the panda went home. Oh, it's cute, and there you go. That's what the game is. You can learn more about it at this-panda.com. There's links to all the different platforms that it's on, which include Windows desktop, Mac desktop, Android phones and tablets, and of course Apple phones and tablets too.
And if you did purchase it in any of those places, a great thing you could do is give it a 5-star review, or write a review that helps more people find the game as well. If you are here because you say, well, that's all nice that you guys make stuff, but I'm more interested in the way you guys think about stuff, fair enough. The show is a product that we make, and we have more products like them, self-contained videos at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download self-contained workshops that we have used in real life, settings. You can download them at a price of your choosing, even free. You can get them for free right now at leanintoart.com/workshops. If you do get value out of them, though, a nice thing you could do is maybe purchase one afterwards for a friend, and then you're doing something cool for a buddy, and you're also giving us a tip for saying, like, hey, thanks for making something that I found useful. If you're watching the show right now on YouTube, giving it a thumbs up helps more people find the show as well. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button. And if you hit the little bell, I've been told this, that if you hit the little bell, you'll be notified when we go live with future Lean Into Art shows. If you're listening to this in a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, iTunes, whatever podcatcher you use, Stitcher, giving the show a 5-star review, wherever you listen to it helps more people find the show as well. And we thank everybody who's been doing all those things. It means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm. Sure does. Thank you.
All right. So, final thought time. You want to talk about Erica Hall's Just Enough Research?
I do. Because what if our sales pitch worked, right? What if this does sound useful and interesting? And you're like, okay, now, yeah, I would like to do some research. I think I want to do timeline personas. Okay. Mm-hmm. Research, especially, I'm about to go do that. Wait a minute. How do I do it? Yeah, we didn't really cover that in detail. But I'm glad you're interested. And I think they're honestly a fantastic book on the topic is the one you mentioned, Jerzy, is Just Enough Research, because it's by Erica Hall of Mule Design. So the book is very pragmatic. It's a small book, yet it's an easy, quick read, and some helpful guidance as far as like different kinds of research for what situations would almost like choose your own adventure, right? And very handy guide, very practical, because then it's like, well, and here's how you can act on it, both with like a little brief process, but then also tools that can help you. So, maybe you have a webcomic and it's not that easy to go, demonstrate it perhaps, right, with your audience. But there's ways where you can remote test usability, stuff like that. And all sorts of handy resources are in the book that it's so condensed yet approachable. Can't recommend it enough.
Erica Hall's Just Enough Research. Mule Design were the people who made what was that podcast? Was it like Let's Make Mistakes?
Yeah. Awesome.
That was a great podcast about design.
And I know they have a new show that I have not delved into too much yet, but just a little bit. It's I'll look it up.
Okay. Is
Voice of Design.
Voice of Design. All right, we'll link to that in the show notes.
Really good from what I've caught so far, but I'm like way behind.
Okay. Well, I'll have to read that too as I think about how I'm going to do more research on my web presence. You know, try to get more, incorporate more of what we talked about today into the way I run my teaching business and my freelance illustration business for sure. So thanks, Rob. This is all really good food for thought. Was there anything else that we wanted to cover? Anything that we might have left on the table?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's like we've created a big, like hopefully an encouraging signal that there's a couple of activities that can help you improve both. I mean, improve your projects and how you present them. And I mean, one of those things is design through the conceptual design things like personas and journeys and that kind of stuff. But then the research, so research and design on your projects. It's a handy way to get out of the, or at least have another signal of like I can have a hard time picking from like what project do I want to work on next. Like which one gets most of my time, and doing a little bit of this, a little bit of research, a little bit of design can help you sift through that, and even like what to work on next. And has a lot of benefits that where you can apply this. So hopefully
and it's got me thinking how I want to think about how I could apply this to like even my mini comic experimentation, because we've talked a lot over the years about like how much I think of mini comics as a way to test drive ideas. And the only data I ever collect is how well they do at shows. Like I take them to a convention and then I watch how people interact with them and what ones get purchased and what ones get handled the most. But what if I were to put some kind of like short link in the back and invite people to say like, hey, here's a free thing if you want to take this quick survey on what you thought of this mini comic. And what kind of questions would I put in that mini comic to find out how well it was received, right?
It sounds like a pretty interesting thing to try.
And I'm not so gentle, Rob.
Facetiously. It really sounds
I know.
Great.
I know. You're being a gentle bro.
I am also envious because I'm like, why haven't I tried that? Because I have put in ads. I cross-sell my stuff. Like I've in a variety of my mini comics, I've like sold Guitar Fretter, and for instance.
Wow. Huh. Yeah. Okay.
But not that. I like that idea. Like those other kinds of, there are other follow-ups.
That can be good. Just like what, like, I guess the question that I'm left with is what behaviors could I invite and track as people interact with my mini comics at shows, right? Whether it's taking a survey or is there something else? Is there a link I can point them to for something else just to see who's actually availing themselves of that, right? Like trackable links that you can put on, like download a free thing of this, get the PDF of this mini comic here, right?
Totally. These are awesome ideas.
All right.
Sounds fun and worth trying. And honestly, if it would be great to hear from the leaners as well. Like, what are some of these kinds of things that you have tried? Favorite tools, tricks, tips, challenges. We could totally dig more into this. Any questions you have about any of this stuff, would love to hear it. And we'll totally dig into it in another episode.
All right. Well, I think we did a podcast. So this is the part where I say we record the show every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. We stream it live on YouTube and then collect it as a podcast at patreon.com/leanintoart and at leanintoart.com. And we'll be back with another episode soon with episode 250. And until next time, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm going to shut off the stream. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Great ideas in the chat.
Oh, thank you.